Okay, thank you all so much for being here this morning and for being on time. I appreciate it. My name is Jill Wirt, and I work with Maui Nui Marine Resource Council. I've worked with them for about 4 years and manage our reef-friendly landscaping program. So we work to reduce potentially harmful runoff from going onto our coral reefs. And I think about coral reefs every day. I don't know if everyone else necessarily does. It's like my Roman Empire a little bit. So I want to just give a little bit of a background on what corals are and the different avenues that we've taken with the Reef-Friendly Landscaping Program. And then we will get into our speakers for the day. So thank you all for being here. Maui Nui Marine Resource Council works for healthy coral reefs, clean ocean water, and abundant native fish. We were founded by Uncle Ed Lindsay and Robin Newbold in 2007. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, if you're not familiar with us. So we work on a number of different projects, both on land and in the ocean. So we do reef surveys in Leeward, Maui, mostly in Kulakai, so like North Kihei area, all the way down to Makena, as well as Lahaina. Yes, so today we will get into Ahupua'a management with Ua Ridi, who's here from Molokai. And I have not heard your presentation yet, so I'm really looking forward to it. Thank you for being here today. Site analysis, design, and management with Jason Dennis, who's the landscaping director here at the Hyatt Regency. They're a gold certified reef-friendly landscaping property. And native, exotic, and invasive plants with Tamara Sherrill from Maui Nui Botanical Gardens. And then we will go outside and Jason will show us around the property and what he's been able to do here. And then we will also learn about compost tea and soil health with Johnny Klassen, who makes compost tea with his company Brew Hut. So first off, we need healthy coral reefs. They're very important culturally as well as for providing food, for subsistence. They are alive. Corals are a little bit of an animal, a little bit of a plant, a little bit of a rock, if you will. And this is a cross-section of what a coral polyp looks like. So inside each of these holes, this is a lobed coral. Inside each of these holes is a little coral polyp. These coral polyps have tentacles that extend out into the water column, and they capture some food out of the water using these stinging cells called nematocysts. But that's only about 10 to 20% of their diet. The other 80 to 90% comes from these little photosynthetic algae called zooxanthellae. And they take energy from the sun and produce food for the corals themselves. When processes like coral bleaching happens, that often expels the zooxanthellae from the coral polyps, and that's what leaves the corals with a bright white color, and then the corals eventually, or can sometimes, starve. Zooxanthellae gives the coral its color, which is why you're left with that bright white or bleaching process. And that can happen due to a variety of reasons. So when the ocean gets too warm, when the ocean gets too acidic, or if there's other runoff type issues. So things like excess chemicals or fertilizers or herbicides. There's a lot on this, but I think it's a good diagram that shows all the different sources of land-based pollution that can end up on our reefs. This is from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, but what I really want us to focus on today are these ones in the boxes here. So stormwater runoff, oil and chemical spills. Stormwater runoff can contribute to sedimentation, and sediment itself, sometimes you think, well, is sediment really a pollutant because dirt is natural, right? But sediment is often the vessel that can have chemicals attached to it as well as nutrients. So the way that pesticides or fertilizers are transported is on those pieces of dirt, those sediment particles. Oil and chemical spills, a large part of fuel and oil spills come from the landscaping industry when we're refilling fuel-operated equipment. So it's important to maybe consider switching to battery-operated, and that's part of the Reef-Friendly Landscaping certification, learning about that. All of these things, all of these runoff issues can cause disease and mortality to corals. They disrupt ecological function, change dynamics in feeding behaviors, and prevent coral growth and reproduction. So ways that we can help: reef-friendly landscaping is one option, reducing our application of synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, herbicides, switching to battery-operated equipment, starting our own compost pile with our green waste, and then reusing those sources of nutrients instead of fertilizers as well. So the problems here, and I'm sure most of you already know this, but water-soluble synthetic fertilizers are often petroleum-based, and they're produced through a very extractive process, right? You have to mine for the nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, so it's very intensive. When it's applied onto the land, it is immediately dissolved when it comes into contact with moisture, whether it's in the soil or rain, and it's meant to feed the plant. So the plant gets that quick source of nitrogen, right? But then you have to reapply maybe 4 to 6 weeks later, so it creates a really addictive cycle. Sometimes these fertilizers are also really salty, and since they are petroleum-based as well, it can really harm the microbes that are in the soil ecosystem. So then you're losing a lot of structure. So just like how in our gut we have a lot of beneficial bacteria, when we take antibiotics, it wipes that bacteria out. So you have to re-up those microbes, right? It's the same thing with the soil. So when you're applying fertilizers and chemicals, you're destroying that microbiome. So what do you need to do to replace that? Things like compost tea, which Johnny will show us today. And then once you start to rebuild the soil microbiology, those microbes will start to break down the organic matter in the soil, allowing nutrients to be more available for plants, and then retain more water as well. We're trying to get out of that addictive short-term cycle of reapplying fertilizers or pesticides every 4 to 6 weeks. And hopefully over time, we create a self-sustaining system, and we won't need those, and then we can save money instead of buying all of those products repeatedly. We have an ecosystem that sustains itself. So again, when this nitrogen runs off, it can cause algal blooms, which does happen here occasionally, and then smother reefs. Impacts of common landscaping applications. So synthetic pesticides can contribute to coral bleaching, as well as birth and developmental effects. Again, fertilizers create algal blooms, eutrophication, tumors on turtles, and herbicides contribute to photosynthesis inhibition. So anytime there's a stormwater runoff event, like I'm sure you've seen in North Kihei, that big sediment plume that often comes out, that blocks, it makes the water really murky, so it doesn't allow sunlight to penetrate through the water column for those zooxanthellae that are in the corals. So they have a really hard time producing food. And again, our corals are already under a lot of stress, so we want to try to reduce this. My big long-term vision is creating like a biological barrier along our shorelines with, resorts in Ka'anapali that are almost like a sponge, and they soak up. We're presented with these circumstances that we didn't create, but how can we do our best to sort of remediate what we've been given? This is a good example of coral bleaching side by side of what a healthy coral looks like and what a bleached coral looks like, what that process is, and then algal blooms here. Our program reduces harmful runoff from conventional landscaping practices, protecting coral reefs and ocean life. So I'll get into a background. That was just mostly, from a marine conservation perspective. I'm not a landscaper by trade. You all are much better at that than I am, but just to give you where I'm coming from, focusing on corals and the health of our reefs. Our reef-friendly landscaping program, we started out with test plots, which I was doing with Jason at Keopuolani Park 3 years ago now, I think, in 2022. Applying a biological soil amendment to mostly turf landscapes, but also on ornamentals as well to target whitefly as a pest treatment, and they worked really well. We have certifications, and then of course educational course, which you're going to be introduced to today. With our test plots, we saw increase in soil microbiology, decreased brown patches in turf, decreased pests, healthier foliage, And we just started by looking at the soil. So we took soil samples and wanted to see what nutrients were present, what microbes were present, and then create the compost tea according to those results. So again, these holistic and organic methods really focus on building up the microbiome in the soil rather than the addictive short-term process that just feeds the plant. How to feed your soil without synthetics, compost and compost tea. Another great additive is biochar. And biochar, this one specifically that was in the back of my car, was made from invasive hardwood forest in Waikamoe and produced by Haleakala Biochar. And it turns into these granules that are really carbon rich. They have a lot of surface area as well, where the microbes in the soil can actually house themselves. So the biochar coupled with the compost tea is a really great start to remediate your soil. Water insoluble fertilizer, this just looks like a picture of dirt, but this was a picture I took when Dwayne Sparkman was teaching me how he makes his water insoluble fertilizer. So when you take your soil samples, you know what nutrients are there, which ones are not, and then you can make your fertilizer adjusting those ratios as needed. Here's some before and afters that we've done with our test plots, so targeting brown patches, and this is just using the biological soil amendment, I believe over 3 to 4 months, applying every week or so, or every other week. We are wrapping up a test plot with Maui gold pineapple, doing an acre with no pesticides and fertilizers and just using compost tea. We've been doing it for about 18 months now, so we're waiting on the results of that. So we're trying to see if it can scale up into large scale agriculture. Overall, really positive results visually. These are our certified properties. The Hyatt gets their plaque today. Bravo, way to go, eliminating all the chemicals. Sheraton also recently got certified. They took the course this year, and then more in progress. Our first certified resort was the Four Seasons Resort on Lanai. They have a lot of capacity to be able to do that, so the transition was really quick for them. These are the different levels, silver and gold. I can share those with you at another time. If you are looking to certify your property as gold, you have to take the entire course. So today is just an introduction of it, and then you can take it online. I'm gonna work on getting a discounted version of it for you, or like a discount code, because I know costs can sometimes be prohibitive in taking it. So if you're looking to transition, this is where we sort of have you start. And part of the program is we give free consultations. So it'll be either be me with Dwayne or just myself going through an inventory of what you're currently applying on your property and then offering alternatives to what you're using. And a lot of those alternatives we make available through the course as well. One piece of this at the very bottom is looking at landscaping equipment, recommending to transition to battery operated. As part of the gold, you have to have all battery operated equipment. And the reason for this is reducing the need for fossil fuels to power those. So with climate change and global warming and the oceans getting warmer, we have to reduce our need for fossil fuels. And one way we can do that is with our landscaping equipment. With the technology now, I believe the battery operated equipment are just as good as fuel powered. I think for some of the taller ones like tree trimmers, it's not as comparable, but the battery operated ones are just as powerful as the fuel operated ones. I think one of the main barriers is making sure that that equipment stays charged throughout the day, like if you're going to multiple sites and have to charge on the go. Transitioning, so now we'll get into the course, what you're all here for today, and some of the topics that you will hear about. I'm very excited. So we started out with test plots, we've certified properties, and then we've developed the educational course. So we've taken people that have worked in this industry for a number of years and really refined their expertise in this and put it all in one place. We based it off of the Northeast Organic Farming Association's Organic Land Care Professionals course, but that one was really geared towards the Northeastern United States environment, I guess. So the weather is much different there, obviously. The ecosystem is much different. We wanted to make a course that was much more targeted to Hawaii's unique environment. So that's what you're going to hear about today. Online, it's 10 topics. There's quizzes under each topic, and then a course practicum, so you apply what you've learned through the course in sort of a client proposal example. You'll get free consultations and then marketing from us highlighting that you've become a certified professional or property